for more. Our international affairs editor, Armen Georgian, joins me here in studio. Armen, as we heard in that report there, US legislators, they're preparing for sanctions, but is the US and the EU on the same page in relation to that?
They've certainly been coordinating very closely. We'll come into those details in a second, Sharon. Just a point on this US sanctions package and the timing. These US senators are hoping to send the package to Congress later this week. As we heard in our report, what's on the table is measures against Russia's largest banks, its sovereign debt, and some export control measures. So there's some quite sweeping really targeting of sectors such as banking, but also targeting individuals. And this follows on from what the US Treasury did after the Russian intervention in Crimea in 2014. So individuals who are thought to be politically connected and who have financial interests as well have already been targeted. So that would be a sort of expanded individual sanctions list if the worst came to the worst. In terms of the how the US and the EU are doing things together, there's obviously a big difference, which is that the US is one government, the EU is 27 members, which works by consensus. So, of course, it's much more difficult to come up with a totally clear one line on what the EU is going to do. As we saw in this event that you're seeing on our screens, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, with the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock in Berlin earlier this month, where the US didn't get a totally firm commitment on whether Germany would use the Nord Stream pipeline as political leverage or not. Germany also is not totally keen on freezing Russia out of the SWIFT international payment system. So there are some differences, particularly between the Germans and the Americans, I would say, although, of course, they've kind of emphasize what they have in common over the last few days and weeks. Another difference we should pay attention to, I think, is the timing of sanctions. So that this US Congress, what the US Congress is doing, they're apparently moving to impose some sanctions even before any further military escalation. They consider that, as far as US senators are concerned, Russia's existing actions, such as, for example, the major cyber attack on the 14th of January, which brought down a number of Ukrainian government websites, that is, as far as the US Senate is concerned, already a justification for imposing some sanctions now, whereas the EU seems more likely to wait before imposing more sanctions.
And looking ahead then to the Security Council meeting, how much pressure is Russia going to be feeling going into that meeting later on Monday?
Well, if we go quickly through the permanent members of the Security Council, so you've got obviously the US, which wants to use the Security Council as this kind of high-profile platform to draw attention to what Russia is doing. In that endeavor, it will certainly be backed by Britain, which is now also sounding very sort of robust and is considering offering more troops for Eastern Europe. So I think the UK government will be very much backing the US position. And then you've got France, a permanent member, which is kind of trying to de-escalate, but was also apparently quite tough on Russia in the recent Normandy format talks. And then you've got China, which is in a very interesting position. Clearly, the Chinese government is kind of hedging its bets, not showing what card it wants to play. It was very interesting looking at the summit between Putin and Xi Jinping, where the Russian readout said that the Chinese did actually support Russian attempts to get these security guarantees from the West and from NATO. The Chinese readout was a bit different and didn't say that quite explicitly. It was much more vague. So I think this suggests that Xi Jinping is kind of waiting to see how things play out, not putting his eggs in any one basket. And that, I think, will make for quite an interesting space to watch as to what China will do in this UN Security Council session this Monday.
So difficult to see much of a resolution coming from the meeting, given that context. Armen, Georgian, thanks so much for that analysis.